What's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and with patch 9.1 getting into Mythic raid testing, finally, I felt it would be a pretty good time to start updating the 9.1 PTR Warlock Feedback Document that we talked about a couple of months ago, give or take, when PTR we thought was going to be starting. There have been a few things that have, I guess, rose, however you want to word it, over the last few weeks, bug-wise, that I want to talk about for Demonology, and really just some tuning that I think Affliction, Destro, and I guess a bit of Demo could use as well. Some of these things are probably going to be abilities and issues you've heard of in the past in 9.0, but they're just still present and relevant and need to be addressed, and some are actually new. Now, with all that being said, I will be putting out a video probably within the next week or so, give or take, talking about each spec, Aff, Destro, Demo in single target and AoE, and just how I feel it stands currently in PTR. But I wanted to get this video out first because feedback is relevant and there are new PTR builds coming every single week. Any week wars, profiles, or add-ons you see here, you can get for free off my Twitch. You want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. I also want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much for the support, guys. I really truly do appreciate it. Heads up, the 9.1 Warlock spreadsheet is indeed now live. The tier 3 Felgar rank of my Patreon or higher does get early access to that. So if you're interested in that, feel free to take a look. There should be a link down below. With all that being said, let's get into the video talking about a couple generic changes, points of feedback that I want to give, and then get into the spec that's arguably been performing, I guess I can say, the most impressive spec from what we expected so far on PTR, Demonology. So starting off with some of the general feedback that I want to give. First of all, if you guys are interested in reading over the documents or anything of the sort, I will have a link to it down below in the video description and probably comment section as well, if you guys want to take a look at the spreadsheet at any point in time. So the first point here is still addressing 6-second pet summons. Now, I've debated just taking this out of the document because there's been radio silence from Blizzard since literal day one on this change. But after playing in the Pro-Am MDI-esque event this weekend for Raider IO, my pet dying 6 times in Plaguefall, pet summons really just need to be addressed, man. Like, the 6-second pet summon time is way too long. People are playing Grimoire of Sacrifice, or they were for a while, at least in arenas anyways. It just needs to be addressed. It's way too long, even with Fel Domination being a thing. The fact of the matter is, at times your pet dies multiple times over the course of a couple minutes for whatever reason, and being stuck in combat and having the option of just resummoning your pet and taking 6 seconds off, or not having a pet, not having your interrupt and losing damage, feels really bad and like sort of clunky design. So I'm hoping that gets addressed, but that might just be wishful thinking at this point. Speaking of Grimoire of Sacrifice, though, this point I think is more relevant to like a PvE based setting, but even PvP, it has its own merit. Grimoire of Sacrifice's current state needs to be reevaluated. The damage proc does not scale with multiple targets, and it shares a row with now Shadow's Embrace and Haunt. Previously it was Dark Caller, but now it's Shadow's Embrace because of the Dark Caller baseline swap, Haunt, and Sacrifice itself. Now, if the damage proc scaled with multiple targets, it would probably be your de facto choice in Mythic Plus, but it doesn't. And the fact of the matter is that Haunt, and I would assume now Shadow's Embrace, is better than Grimoire of Sacrifice. Grimoire deals roughly about the same damage as your pet, maybe a tiny bit less, a little more, less more, I'm not even sure at this point. But you lose your pet utility as well as losing access to Haunt or Shadow's Embrace. It's just not very good. And just tuning wise, it's not where you want to be. My suggestion is Lonely Winter. I think it's called Lonely Winter, and Lone Wolf, the Hunter ability and the Frost Mage ability. They both give, I believe, flat damage increases. It's like bonus mastery or bonus intellect, bonus agility, whatever it is. Grimoire of Sacrifice, I feel, just needs to go back to something like that. I'm not asking for a 0-21-40 Shadow Bolt spam back where you sack your pet and have a 20% damage increase, but something along those lines, because I feel like the damage portion of Sacrifice has just missed the mark. Tuning wise, it might be a bit of a headache early on initially to get the numbers right, but I think this would offer a lot of value in Mythic Plus because that row is Shadow's Embrace, Haunt, and Sacrifice now. And you took Haunt previously even when Dark Caller was a thing just because of your single target damage build as Aff, but it feels awkward in Plus at times. I really would like to see Sacrifice addressed, readdressed, whatever. Either change the damage effect to scale with multiple targets, have it proc multiple times in an AoE setting, or make it something like a flat damage increase or a flat intellect increase, something along those lines, more around what Lone Wolf and Lonely Winter, I believe is what's called, do. That's pretty relevant. The final generic change here, coming from Chanimal, Dark Soul needs to not be dispellable. It being a final row talent on a 2-minute CD that you get very little value out of is awkward, especially in arenas. Dark Soul, needs to not be dispellable. So starting off the spec feedback with Demonology here, which is awkward because normally we do Destro or F first. I think Demo deserves its time in the light. We're going to come back to these two bug issues, whatever you want to call them. These are the biggest things that need to change for Demonology in 9.1. But I want to come back to those. We'll watch a clip here which shows exactly what this issue is. I want to get to the actual feedback first. The first thing, Grimoire Felguard being a 2-minute CD versus 1.5. It was changed from 1.5 to 2 minutes in the last like 48 hours before Battle for Azeroth went live. And it's been this awkward 2-minute CD ever since then. Now, I don't know if it's Blizzard's idea or intention to purposefully have Grimoire and Demonic Tyrant desync cooldown wise, because it sort of makes sense. It gives you an extremely strong damage profile every minute and a half with your Tyrant, with your Vile Fiend, if you're playing it with your Grimoire. But it makes things really awkward as Demo, because you're playing Soul Rot on a minute cooldown. If you're playing Wilfred's, you're playing Soul Rot on a minute cooldown with your Vile Fiend being at 45 seconds, your Tyrant being at minute 7, and your Grimoire being 2 minutes. It makes things really, really awkward, and just the rotational fluidity of Demonology not very good, not very exciting. It just feels sort of lackluster. It feels sort of like, I hate using the word clunky, but it just feels sort of clunky. I would assume this would probably need a bit of a nerf to the actual damage it deals. I would not want to see a nerf to the actual duration of Grimoire Felguard, because that messes up demonic consumption, Tyrant setup, and things like that. But I would not mind seeing a nerf to like the actual damage Grimoire deals, but also reducing the cooldown to 1.5 minutes from 2 minutes. Doing that would give you perfect timing with your Tyrant being every Tyrant, Grimoire, Vile Fiend, Grimoire Felguard, Vile Fiend, and then your actual decon without playing Wilfred's. With Wilfred's, you're holding your Vile Fiend a little bit. It's just sort of awkward. It's doable, it's fine, and Demonology's single target is still very strong. But this change here would make Demonology's just rotational gameplay and fluidity so much better. But it would most likely have to accompany some kind of nerf to Grimoire Felguard. Second thing here is about Nether Portal. Now, similar to Grimoire Felguard, Nether Portal has also been in a very odd spot for a very long time and really hasn't been taken in any setting since like Uldir. That was before Decon was, I believe, buffed and before we knew the power levels of Decon. Either way, two things here. Number one, Nether Portal is awkward because it's not for however many soul shards you spend, you summon X demons. It's whenever you spend soul shards. Every time you spend soul shards, you'll also command demons from the Nether to come out and fight for you. Now, this ability is really, really cool. Like, Nether Portal is hands down my favorite ability for Demonology. The fact that it's lacking in damage is an issue in itself, but we'll get to that. So if you're playing with Portal, you build the 5 shards, you go Portal, you go Vile Fiend, or sorry, Grimoire, that's a demon, Vile Fiend, another spawn, dogs here, but then your rotation is Shadowbolt, hand, Shadowbolt, hand, and depending on timing, you go into your Tyrant here, and you have like the Baleful shards coming in, so you go like hand. For these last little summons here, give or take, depending on your portal duration. But the issue is that Demonology never wants to cast one shard hand in dual lands. It makes implosions awkward, it makes just sequencing awkward, it's just not optimal. Now, once again, I don't know if this is Blizzard's idea of maybe breaking up the monotonous, I guess like maybe the general gameplay, rotational, whatever you want to call it, of Demonology being three shards hand, 3 shards hand. But it's a very, very small change. Wouldn't really change much damage wise, but it's a big quality of life change for Demon's rotation. It's not going to change much damage wise because you're still going to be building 3 shards. So there's not really much of a difference in going Shadowbolt, hand, versus going Shadowbolt, because they're still going to spawn 3 demons. And technically, okay, you're casting 1 hand for 3 shards, so maybe a tiny bit of tuning might be needed there, but you're still having to cast the Shadowbolts. That's the thing. And with the way Portal's performing, it wouldn't even be that big of an issue either way. It might help close that gap a little bit between Portal and Decon, having to cast 2 less hands essentially for those demons. But either way, even excluding that change, which I think needs to happen, the other issue is just that Decon and Nether Portal are just so... Nether Portal is should be, presumably from what these talents look like, your de facto single target talent in this row. It's a large 3-minute cooldown that costs a soul shard. But then again, Decon is single target demon fire damage, and Sack Souls is single target too. So this entire row is based around, you know, single target abilities, but honestly, like, you just take Decon and you never play anything else in this row. Sack Souls is a disaster. It's been a mess for a long, long time. Portal is awesome, but the fact that it's a 3-minute cooldown and is worse than demonic consumption, probably even at a 2-minute cooldown or a 1.5 minutes, is an issue. Decon is really, really strong with stamina scaling, with Vile Fiend, with Grimoire, and I don't think that's going to be changing. But if Nether Portal is going to be competitive, putting aside the quality of life, 3 shard hand rule dance versus Shadowbolt hand sequencing, I would like to see a cooldown reduction on this, if possible. Not mention the same thing, and most likely some kind of like damage scaling buff to the demons that are actually summoned by your Nether Portal. Now, making it a 2-minute CD is a bit awkward because you have like your 1.5-minute Tyrant again, but then you also have Grimoire at 2 minutes. And if you're playing Wilfred's, I mean, you might have that massive every 2-minute profile with Nether Portal and your Tyrant and Grimoire and all of that. Either way, I love Nether Portal. I think it's an awesome ability. It's really cool thematically, but the fact that we haven't been able to play it for, I don't know, 3 years, whatever it is at this point, is really sad. Because I think it's the coolest ability in the game. And look at your damage breakdown here, dude. Look at all the damage look at all these pets. It's so cool. It's such a cool ability, but without it being addressed tuning wise, it's just never gonna be played. The final point of feedback that I want to give before the 2 bugs for Demonology is Summon Demonic Tyrant being an instant cast ability like your Infernal or your Dark Lair. Now, I get the fact that Demonology is very tight when it comes to setting up Tyrants. You want to get your Grimoire, your Vile Fiend, your Dogs, your Imps set up, and then go into your Tyrant cast. I would assume having to account for the Demonic Tyrant cast time is a part of what Blizzard wants you to do for just Demo's rotation. And if you mess up your Tyrant cast, if you delay too long or try and squeeze in an extra Imp, you're punished because you don't get the decon value if your Grimoire expires, or if your Vile Fiend expires, or your Dogs, whatever, what have you. But there are so many times in-game where my Tyrant has messed up, scuffed, something's happened, where having it be an instant cast, being knocked back, interrupted, whatever, would make the ability just so much better, I feel. Now, maybe just reduce the cast time by a little bit. I think maybe asking for an instant cast Tyrant might be a little excessive, but still, it's just frustrating. And gameplay wise, I think it would make a huge difference for Demonology in basically every setting. This might be a bit of a reach, but I wanted to mention it nonetheless, and, well, you know, cross our fingers because, hey, crazier things have happened. So the 2 bugs here. The biggest issue that needs to be addressed with Demonology, I feel, on PTR right now, is the fact that your pets, so here, this is how this works. This is my fellow guard. Here he is. His name is Judhun. I'm going to pop my Soul Rot. Soul Rot gives the player a stamina bonus, you the player, which means your pets get more stamina when you have more stamina. Demonic Consumption makes your Tyrant siphon life from your pets, which does more damage through Demon Fire. This is how Demonology works with Decon, and Demonology stamina scaling is really OP because of this. The issue at hand is that, put on my emblem here, is that at times it takes your pets anywhere from 2 to like 5-6 seconds to update stamina wise after you the player get the stamina buff. Now, this has been an issue for a long time, and for the most part, watch my pet's health here, by the way. I'm gonna focus this if we can here. For the most part, Demonology sort of just gotten around this by casting Soul Rot before your Tyrant set up for like the Growth Invigoration buff that's rolling. Because if you cast, let's say for example here, I summon these Imps, right? They have how much health here? 6924. If I Soul Rot, watch their health. Wait. Now it updates 4 seconds later. But if I cast this right now for 1 Imp, here's that Imp right there. It comes out just with the baseline extra stamina modifier. So pets that aren't active, or they're active before you cast your Soul Rot or your emblem or whatever stamina based ability you have, like an APT from a shaman, like Ancestral Vigor from a shaman, like Rallying Cry, like any kind of stamina based effect, their health update is slow. Now that might not make a huge deal right now because, yeah, once again, Demonology can just play around it by Soul Rotting early into your Tyrant setup. Basically, you precast the Bolt right into Soul Rot. That's fine. The big issue is with Nia's ability in 9.1, the Bonded Hearts ability. I know this is behind my camera, but you can read the tooltip. Gaining a stack of redirected anima from Grove Invigoration, which is what we're talking about, what gives Soul Rot the stamina scaling effect, the stamina buff. Heals up to 5 nearby allies for 2% of their health. If any of the affected allies are another Covenant, redirected anima's mastery and maximum health effects are increased by 50% for 5 seconds. Now listen, guys, I know it's not saying we get 50% more stamina. That's not what I meant in the last video. But still, it's 50% more stamina or 50% more health increase on growth invigoration. TLDR, it's more health to the player, which means more health to your pets, which means more health to your tyrant siphoning decon value. The issue is that bonded hearts last 5 seconds. How long did it take my imp to get that stamina value there? About 5 seconds, which means that a decent bit of time you're not going to be able to use bonded hearts optimally as far as demo is concerned. Now, once again, the normal opener for demo is you just build the 5 shards, cast your soul rot, and just go like Grimoire, Vile Fiend, dogs, imps, then cast your tyrant. No issues there. But with this ability, optimally, from what I would assume, if it's working properly, you're not getting the delayed stamina buff in your pets, you'd want to go like Grimoire, Vile Fiend, just dogs, build everything into it, and then go soul rot into your tyrant. That gives you the most time to get as many pets out as possible, then soul rot, instant stamina update, then right in the decon. But if you have to wait for your pets to gain extra stamina, and half the time it's just not going to work, it's a huge issue. And it's an issue outside of that too, because at times the stamina lasts longer than it should after the effects expire. I don't know if it's some weird kind of like internal tick rate or check that Blizzard has for pet stamina scaling, but if Demonology is going to be built like this, that effect really needs to be addressed, because that is like a huge issue heading into 9.1 with Nia and Bonded Hearts, and really just in general for the spec. The last issue with Demonology that I feel needs to be addressed, and this is like the second biggest bug going into 9.1, revolves around Demonology playing Wilfred Sigil, the cooldown reduction to your Summon Demonic Tyrant, which is very strong playing the decon ability. This is THD. Say hello to THD, boys. Thank you for the clip, THD. I appreciate it. I didn't want to go dig my own up. So his Tyrant cooldown is right here. This, you can see whenever he casts it, it'll go back on CD. The issue that happens here is, at times, with Wilfred's being a cooldown reduction to your Tyrant, when you're setting up your Tyrant, for example, and it's coming off CD, and you have your Vile Fiend and your Grimoire and things rolling, at times when it comes off CD and you try to go right into it, you'll hit the button to cast a spell, it'll incur the GCD, but it won't start to cast the spell, which means that your pets you have out are delayed. Your Tyrant cast is delayed by like another second and a half, give or take, which is really bad, because once again, Demonology, decon, you want to have your pets, you want to squeeze in as many pets as humanly possible before you Tyrant. The big Exodia Tyrant is Grimoire, Vile Fiend, dogs, and I believe 11 imps. You're running to the last millisecond right there, trying to get every single little pet out possible. And with this bug being a thing, it's not going to happen. That's a huge issue. Watch his Tyrant cast here. His cast bar is right here. His Tyrant icon's right there. So I believe he goes Hand of Gul'dan here, Tyrant. Right now, there's the GCD. Hello, game. It incurs the GCD, but it doesn't cast a spell. See? Like, what? Like, hand cast? Tyrant? Tyrant? Hello? Now it goes. That's going to be a tremendous issue if Demonology gets to be a thing this tier in progression, because that bug happening every once in a while, every so often, you lose, I would assume, your Grimoire and probably your Vile Fiend as well, because you're playing it so close to the chest with just pet extensions and decon value. That really needs to be addressed. From what I've seen, it's only an issue with Wilfred's and not baseline Demonology, but I have not been able to replicate it myself lately. Either way, that and the stamina scaling effects, not just even outside of growth invigoration, really need to be addressed for 9.1 if Demonology is going to be competitive. Moving into the Affliction feedback that I want to give, the first thing that I need to touch on is Summon Darklair. Darklair has gone through a lot of changes over the course of BFA into Shadowlands, and so has Aph's profile, which has sort of hurt Darklair in the long run. As a cooldown, it's a really underwhelming ability, and that's extrapolated out even more when it comes to Mythic Plus. The damage that your Darklair deals is Eye Beam damage, that your actual pet deals. That's what he does, Eye Beam. He does indeed extend the duration of your dots on every target, which is nice. It's relevant and gives you more rapture damage, so that's not to be discounted. But unlike how it was in BFA, where you had Unstable Affliction as your main soul shard spender, you had Death Bolt, so you had all your dots extended to a crazy amount. You have 5 UAs rolling, you Death Bolt, and your Darklair would extend all those bolts, or all those dots, which would give you a bigger Death Bolt, and just insane value. All that was removed in Shadowlands. Death Bolt's gone. It might even be a PB talent. It'd be gone now. I don't even know. Unstable Affliction stacking is gone. It's no longer your soul shard spender, but Darklair was left in the same form. So it deals Eye Beam damage, but there's no Death Bolt damage. There's really nothing else synergy-wise besides dot extension, extra rapture damage that gets you more value out of your Darklair. Now, unlike Infernal, Darklair is really only a single target ability. A change I would like to propose is an AoE I-beam cast from your Dark Lair, because I-beam doesn't hit incredibly hard. The damage it actually deals is increased based on the number of dots you have active. So in Mythic Plus, it would deal a bit more damage than in single target, assuming you have 4 or 5 mobs going. But at the same time, if your Dark Lair was to AoE every mob that has like an agony on it, for example, I don't want to say corruption because that's too easy to spread with seed. Actual agony, it gives you a choice you have to make in Mythic Plus. If you're in a large pool like 7-8 mobs, how many mobs do I want agony before I cast my Dark Lair? How many mobs do I want to do this to? I don't want to cast a seed here. What do I want to do sequencing wise to min-max my Dark Lair value and before I go into Rapture spam or seed spam? If you really wanted to make it more relevant in single target, you could also have it deal more damage to a target affected by unstable affliction, which fits the Shadowlands profile of affliction, well, just so well. If an AoE I-beam damage thing is not something Blizzard wants to do with Dark Lair, another option is to increase the rate our dots take while keeping the dot duration extension around when you summon your Dark Lair. This would be also an increase in single target as well as AoE, which I sort of feel is needed for AF in its major cooldown right now. As Destro, you drop your Infernal. You know you're going to have half a minute of extra shard gen, Immolation Aura. If you're playing Infernal brand value, this just big damage profile. As Demonology, your Tyrant does most of your damage in the first place. As Dark Lair, or as Affliction, your Dark Lair post pet damage haunt scaling does like 4% of your damage in single target. And that's on a 2-minute cooldown as well, with Dark Caller being baseline. It's actually abysmal and really needs to be addressed. So I'm hoping some other changes come to Dark Lair at this point. That's what I like to see, but not really holding my breath. Number 2, Seed of Corruption. Now, Seed of Corruption, its damage was buffed by 20%, 20 or 25%, I believe, about a month ago, give or take. Seed itself is a very strong effect. My only concern, and I was talking about this before Seed was buffed, is that Seed of Corruption's cast time is too long. Now, with this current gear on, 24% haste, my Seed cast time, if I turn tooltips back on, is 2 seconds. Rapture is 1.2. So for the most part, Rapture's about half the cast time, rounding a little bit, give or take, of Seed of Corruption. So it'll be the same cast time. My main fear, even though so has been buffed, and it's going to be very good in AoE, assumingly next tier, my main fear is that Seed's cast time is still just too short. When it comes to Mythic Plus, if you're playing a build, playing Writhe and things, you still have to go in and set up and cast your Seed, get your Agonies rolling, get your UA up. If you're playing Haunt, do that, and then you start your Seed spam. But compared to a class like a Fire Mage that can just go in and drop a Flame Patch and just go insane and start blasting off, or an Ellie Shaman that can drop a Chain Lightning and just go in Earthquake and go to the moon damage-wise, I'm still a little nervous about this cast time. It's a pretty long cast time compared to other classes that are out there. Now, those classes might be considered meta classes, but that's something in itself, right? You know, every class is built differently in Mythic Plus, but when it comes to AF, the Seed damage, the Seed's build, I think is gonna be really strong next tier, especially on fortified keys or keys where you're pulling multiple packs. Seed's like soft cap at 20, so essentially it's uncapped. You're not pulling 20 plus mobs usually in Mythic Plus, unless you're in like an MDI key pushing kind of setting. But I'm just concerned the cast time is a little too long. Maybe making it like a 1.75 second cast if I have this much haste roughly, reducing the cast time by like a third of a second, give or take, maybe even half a second. I think we go a really long way for Seed, and I don't think it's too excessive at all. The other change to Seed, it needs to pop when you cast 2 seeds on a target. If I seed these and cast another one, it doesn't pop. It just technically goes on another target and then resets, which is weird in itself. It needs to pop the seed. It's very awkward. I'm pretty sure like that was changed at some point, maybe going into BFA. But previously, if you had a seed active on, or if you had a seed like implanted in a target, however you want to word it, and you cast another seed on top of it, it would pop the seed. But on PTR at this point, it's not doing that. If you cast seed, it'll debuff 3 targets with the actual effect. But then if I cast another seed on the same target, you get 1 seed on the thing that's not dotted, and casting another seed just refreshes the buff. It's very, very awkward. I don't know what's going on here, but this needs to be addressed too. I think casting a seed on top of a seed should pop the seed, and yeah, and also having just one, that would also fix the weird issue here with having just 1 seed go out with when the other 3 are debuffed. It needs to be looked at. There's something weird going on here. But either way, seed spam can be very real next patch. It might just need a little bit more tuning or help at this point. The last couple points about Affliction are based around Creeping Death and the Malefic Wrath Withering Bolt playstyle. Creeping Death is an issue though. CD makes your dots deal their full damage 15% faster, however it does not bring with it any additional shard generation because it's the same amount of ticks, just 15% faster. The dot damage has been drastically reduced over the course of BFA and Shadowlands, which it has. Once again, we don't have unstable affliction stacking anymore. I mean, looking back into Legion where dots dealt a crazy amount of damage, dots have been nerfed damage-wise a little bit more and more over expansions past. And with Rapture being our main spender and not UA, CD feels even worse than it did in Legion. On top of all that, reduced duration of dots is anti-synergistic with Malefic Rapture, and now Withering Bolt the conduit, because your damage is not just Rapture windows anymore. It's never been dots, it's been Rapture, but now it's dumping Shadow Bolts and Drain Souls while you have your dot effects up, whether it be your 4 main dots, Agony, Corruption, Siphon, UA, or 6, those 4 plus PS and Soul Rod if you're playing it. That is where most of your damage is dealt, with those Shadow Bolts, with those Drain Souls now, because of Withering Bolt, or Withering Bolt and Malefic Wrath. I feel the best solution for Creeping Death would be to increase the tick rate of our dots by 15%, but not reduce their duration. This would increase damage as well as directly increase shard generation slightly. I guess they could work it that way if they wanted to, while also not being counterintuitive with Malefic Rapture or Withering Bolt. Basically something very similar to what, where's this ability here? Where is it? The half one. There you go. All of your damage over time effects occur 33% more often. You can literally copy and paste this ability here, I guess the text on it for the most part, just remove the next 15-second clause and make it 15% more often on Creeping Death. I think it'd be totally fine. It would give a lot of extra value to Creeping Death in like 3-4 target plus settings, which is a bit scary with dots in the first place, but Dark Soul is still a strong option. But with Creeping Death being the way that it is, it's super anti-synergistic with Withering Bolt, with Rapture, and just the way that F is built in general right now. The ability is cool. With a little bit of tuning, it could be insane, but it's just sort of missed the mark a little bit. The final thing I want to hit on here is the current playstyle of Malefic Wrath and Withering Bolt. This playstyle, now, it's cool launching these massive Shadow Bolts. It's really cool. It feels awesome. It feels great, but the playstyle is punishing, especially when it comes to this tier on fights like Remnant of Ner'zhul and things. Trying to maintain your Malefic Wrath buff is really tough in a lot of settings where you just don't have a lot of wiggle room and a lot of time. Am I playing PS here? I'm not. Where you don't have a lot of time. Let's say I set up a regular opener here for the most part. We Soul Route, we have our PS rolling, we go here, we Rapture to 3. 1, 2, 3, start launching these bolts. It's fine in your like Dark Lair window because you have dot extension, everything's good to go. You can maintain pretty easily here, but you're still trying to get value out of your Raptures a bit, which means you have your PS up, you have your Soul Rod up, so you want to Rapture a little more often than not here. But when you have like one shard and you're trying to maintain Malefic Wrath outside of this window here, things become a little sketchy. If you throw in a mechanic like a Remnant of Ner'zhul, where the floor is lava and you get knocked up a million yards if you stand in a pool, or you die if you get hit by another pool, or if this happens or that happens, it's really hard to maintain Malefic Wrath. We played it on Painsmith, and in that intermission, it's also very hard to maintain Malefic Wrath. Now, the legendary was buffed damage-wise, I believe damage-wise, and its duration was increased from 8 seconds to 10 seconds in 9.0.5. I would really like to see the duration of this effect increased a bit more. Probably to like the 13-second mark. I'd take 12, but I think 13 or 14 is a lot more forgiving. The issue here is that you have to be a little careful with the duration extension because of shard generation. You still want to make it I mean, I assume Blizzard's idea and intention is to make it a mini game inside of a game to maintain the buff, which I don't like personally, but I don't think there's enough room here. I think it needs to be like 12 seconds minimum with an upwards of 14, give or take. It would make the playstyle a lot more, I think, fun, engaging, and nowhere near as punishing and as stressful when you're in a setting that requires you to move more than a yard, because trying to Rapture in the middle of a Ner'zhul knockback going out, or a ground effect going out, or phase 2 of Painsmith, or a dance on the Garrosh fight, or anywhere on Kel'Thuzad, or any fight really this tier is pretty awkward and sort of stressful. Saving the best spec for last, we have Destruction. I don't have as much feedback to give on Destro as I do Demo and Aff. I don't think Destro's in a terrible spot right now. It's not our best single target spec, but it's good in 2-target cleave, and it's good at doing what Destro does. There are a couple points though that I really want to hit on. Number 1, Reign of Chaos, and the RNG that Reign of Chaos brings to everything. Reign of Chaos's RNG with spawning Infernals, even with bad luck protection built in, is still far too excessive. At times you proc 3 to 5 Infernals, and at times you get 1 at the end of the window. Procking an Infernal early into your Reign of Chaos window brings with it a snowball effect with extra charge in early, which means more Infernals faster because you're casting more bolts, more Rain of Fires, and it just snowballs so incredibly fast. The proposed change I'd like to see is having your first shard consuming spell, whether it be a Chaos Bolt or a Rain of Fire, give you a Rain of Chaos proc 100% of the time. This would help so much when it comes to RNG. It would make it so much more consistent and competitive. A set number of X shards spent could also be, I guess, implemented to help with consistency. Maybe like it guarantees you an Infernal every 4 shards spent. 3 probably would be a little too much because the Rain of Fire giving you an Infernal every time, but 4 would be 2 Chaos Bolts, or a Rain and a Chaos Bolt, or 1 or 2 Rains, however you want to word it. When you're playing Reign of Chaos and you go into Mythic Plus or whatever, and you're expecting this huge AoE profile, you drop your Infernal. Watch them. I'm going to get good procs here because we're recording this, and you launch like multiple spells. Having that's what I want, because look at the shard gen here. It just snowballs. Look at all the shard gen, man. And what does that mean? It means more Inferno procs. It means more spells cast, typically if you get good RNG, but having a proc on the first shard consuming spell, more Infernals. It keeps going. It snowballs. But not getting a proc in your opener and getting a proc like right there in the last 10 seconds of the window or so, it's so miserable. Half the time it gets you no value, and there's been times I've literally gotten 0 Infernals in a Reign of Chaos window. Having that consistency, every single Infernal, is big, and I think it's needed, because Rain is a really cool ability, but it's just sort of missed the mark, and it might be better in certain spots, certain settings, but nobody wants to play it because it's far too inconsistent. This would be a huge change, a good quality of life change, and would really help Destro a lot. Number 2, Fire and Brimstone's damage output is subpar compared to both Inferno and Cataclysm in this row. Inferno is played with like the Soul Conduit Reign of Chaos build, once again, which needs help, in like huge, really heavy AoE settings where you're going to have like a coordinated plus group, a lot of AoE. They're going to pull around your Infernal. And with that being the case, I think Destro has the highest AoE ceiling of any spec, any class in the game over the course of your Infernal, if the packs live that long. The thing is, they need to live for half a minute, and you need to be in a plus group or an AoE setting where your tank is pulling around your Infernal, which doesn't really happen a whole lot. And then you have Cataclysm here, which Kata is just Kata. It's the only ability in this row. It's a single target DPS gain. It's just good in the first place. Applying Immolate to 4 mobs is actually huge. Instead of going, you can just go Kata for the burst damage of 4 Immos versus going, all right, you pulled the pack, everyone else is popping off, I'm putting up Immolates, how exciting. But Fire and Brimstone's just in a really awkward spot. The reduced damage it deals, 40%, is just nowhere near what it needs to be. It needs to be like probably 70%, or just the same amount of damage. I don't know, you can tune it. But when it comes to the shard gen here, you have plenty of shard gen through Kata because you're rolling 4 Immolates off the bat, plus the burst damage. You have plenty of shard gen playing Inferno because you're casting 10 Rain of Fires back to back to back. So it misses the mark both in damage, in single target, and AoE obviously, and it misses the mark in shard gen. Fire and Brimstone just needs help. The shard gen is nice here, it's acceptable, but I think the bigger buff that it needs is to its raw damage. Don't make it 40%, make it 70 or 80. If you want to reduce it, just buff it more. It needs help. It's an awesome ability, but it hasn't been played since Legion. No, since WoD, when it was the baseline ability. Where it was actually really cool and worked with Chaos Bolt. Fire and Brimstone is iconic, but hasn't been played in a very long time. Needs a little bit of help. Third thing here, having Backdraft affect Soulfire. This is a weird one. I think it'd be a good change. Will go a long way in increasing the playability of the talent itself. It gives you the choice of Flashover with the extra Backdraft charge or Soulfire, which brings extra Havoc value. At the same time, Eradication with Infernal Imp scaling also is relevant in Havoc settings. The thing is, like, you can Havoc a Soulfire. Like, I put Havoc here, launch my Soulfire, it Havocs. And keep in mind, Soulfire gives you 2 shards because you're Havocing it, and applies Immolate to your targets. It also deals a lot of damage, but it's not affected by Backdraft. Being affected by Backdraft would be huge, because you could go Havoc, Conflag at 2.5 shards, like 3.5, launch your Soulfire, Conflag again, Bolt, Incinerate, Bolt. You get so much value out of Havoc window here, and it would give you a really good choice of, okay, do I want Soulfire in this permanent 2-target setting, or do I want Eradication or Flashover? It would add so much just potential to this row versus being just really 1 ability, maybe 2. I would love to see Soulfire affected by Backdraft. I think it can be a really small change, but a big one when it comes to a lot of settings, and just a quality of life increase for Destro. Final thing here, we can close the feedback on this. I know it's a bit of a reach, but this is the, and typically changes like this aren't made in PTR cycles, but it's such a big change, I want to touch on a little bit. Cataclysm could potentially be moved to the specs baseline toolkit. Kata is typically the only talent selected in that row for destruction, which it is, because Fire and Brimstone, Inferno, and brings with it a great deal of utility for the spec and Mythic Plus and raid settings. Like I said, when you've got a Fire Mage or an Elite Shaman or one of X spec jumping in and going insane and nuking everything into the ground, and I'm a Destro lot going in playing Inferno, everyone's going crazy. Here I go. Okay, now I can do damage. The whole pack's dead. Like, having Kata and going into a pack is going Infernal. Kata. Boom. You're going. Kata is like the one spell that would just fit Demonology. There's a few, but the one main spell, the best one, that would fit Demonology or Destro's toolkit just so incredibly well, being baseline. The fact that the talent is sort of sad. Making it part of your baseline toolkit would be insane. It's also the only ability in this row that's an actual, like, single target damage increase, which is awkward, and I'm sure not something Blizzard wants to happen. Making it baseline would give you room for another ability. Hey, people love Flashpoint. People love rolling Havoc. I'm not bringing him back. You know, make him a talent. But having Kata here and not part of your baseline toolkit, it legitimately feels like you're missing something when you're not playing with that Kata. It's like, oh, this spec just feels so less complete. It feels less complete. It feels so incomplete when you're not playing with Kata. When you have Kata, it rounds the spec out so well. Sign my petition. Bring Cataclysm to our baseline toolkit. That's what I want for Destro. And I think that about rounds it all out for the feedback and thoughts, everything that I have so far on Warlock in 9.1 through most of the heroic Sanctum of Domination raid testing. Let me know what you guys think of these proposed changes and feedback in the comment section below. Any questions, drop them down there as well. I'll be sure to get back to you. The Demonology bug fixes, whatever they are, really need to be addressed. I would love to see Reign of Chaos with a bit less RNG. And the Malefic Wrath, not Grasp, Malefic Wrath Withering Bolt build is cool, but I think could use a bit of help in the management, less anxiety fun department. So hopefully this feedback is taken into account, and hopefully we maybe, potentially, possibly, hopefully, see some changes made in future builds. Once again, any Week Wars profiles or add-ons you see here, you can grab for free off my Twitch. Feel free to do so anytime. Ask any questions there as well. Huge shout out again to all my patrons. Thank you so much for all support, guys. Heads up, the 9.1 Affliction Warlock Shadowlands, I guess, document for Sanctum of Domination is now indeed live. The tier 3 Thugguard rank of my Patreon or higher does indeed get early access to that if you're interested in checking that out. Now, if you guys would like to see more WoW content and help support the channel, be sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons below. It helps out a ton. Thanks again, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.